And the first item is the approval of the minutes of March 8th, 2021. Do we have a motion? Any discussion?
I move to approve those minutes of 3, 8, and 12, 21 rather.
Thank you. Mike, you had to,
Second.
okay. Any further discussion by the council? All in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. The next item is manager's report. Bill?
Yeah, both sets of minutes. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, under manager's report, I have several items for you. I think the first one I'd like to introduce is Janine Gorham and Sarah Gorham are here to give you a report on an incident they've had, unfortunately, in our community. And I've asked them to come tonight, so Sarah and Janine, if you'd like.
Should I keep my mask on?
It's up to you.
Good evening, Mr. Shane, council members, and Ms. Moore. My name is Sarah Gorham. I grew up in Cumberland. Can you not hear me? Sorry. I grew up in Cumberland. I graduated from GREELY, as did my siblings and my husband, actually. We have many friends who still live in this town, and my husband and I actually, after all these years, still consider Cumberland to be home. Life in Cumberland was and remains a very idyllic place to raise a family. I'm here today on behalf of my parents who remain residents to discuss a deeply disturbing incident involving a member of the Cumberland Police Department. On January 29th, my older brother John died at my parents' home after a traumatic and very tragic week-long struggle for his life. He was discharged home from Maine Medical Center on hospice the evening before his death after suffering a catastrophic brain injury, and life support had been withdrawn. That evening, my family and I cared for him until a nurse could arrive the next morning. And the next morning, a nurse from Hospice of Southern Maine arrived, and my brother actually passed very shortly after her arrival. My parents' priest arrived to provide last rites. Very sadly, however, my dad was not home at the time because he had to leave to attend a necessary cancer treatment. After his death, it became clear that there were logistics that prevented the hospice service from declaring him dead. Namely, he died so quickly after the hospice nurse's arrival that she hadn't had time to fully admit him as a hospice patient under their service. So she followed protocol and called the fire department to come pronounce him dead. She told me she reported it as an anticipated death when she called. A first responder arrived, and he told us it would be necessary for a police officer to come because it was an unattended death at home. Shortly thereafter, the detective arrived at my parents' home. He stormed in donning full protective gear. He made no formal introductions and immediately positioned himself between my family and my deceased brother, who remained in the hospital bed. He made no attempt to assess what had transpired or who was present. He was gruff, unprofessional in his approach, and at no point did he offer any condolences for our recent loss. The hospice nurse made multiple attempts to detail the course of events, and he was entirely dismissive of her and loudly spoke over her. He began his intake wherein he appeared annoyed, impatient, and disrespectful. He consistently referred to my brother as the body, and not once did he address him by name. He briefly described to us that due to circumstances, the body was now in possession of the medical examiner, and he was here to conduct an investigation, as this was now considered a suspicious death, and the home and my brother's body were now considered a crime scene. He told us he would leave with the body when the time came. At this point, the situation in the home escalated very quickly. My mother became greatly distressed. She attempted to explain that we made plans with Cremation of Southern Maine for pickup later that afternoon, and that we were anxiously awaiting the arrival of my father so that he would have time to pay his respects. My mother attempted to explain this to the detective, and he dismissed her and said that the body would leave when he left. Upon seeing my mother so grieved, my sister and I immediately became very defensive. Here we were in our childhood home, grieving the very tragic loss of our brother, not even an hour before. And we now found ourselves in a very heated and tense encounter with a police officer, being made to feel as though we had just committed a crime. At one point, the detective approached me and my mother in a very intimidating manner and stood within a foot of my body. He was very clearly agitated, he was red in the face and breathing heavy. Knowing I had done absolutely nothing wrong, I very firmly told him to back up from my personal space. At this point, the priest actually stepped forward, positioning himself between my mother and the detective in an attempt to de-escalate him to no avail. I fully understand that this detective had a job to do. I understand that. However, he lacked professionalism, skill, and any ounce of human decency. At no point did he communicate compassion or patience or understanding, but rather from the moment he stepped foot into our home to the moment he left, he remained brusque, accusatory, and dismissive of me and my family in our moment of deepest vulnerability. This was an obvious hospice scenario. My brother's body lay in a hospital bed. There were 4 grieving women, a hospice nurse wearing a badge, and a priest in a collar. The hospice nurse and reverend were in complete disbelief, and both stated they have never seen anything like this in their careers. My father returned home to a driveway full of police cars and an ambulance. He was then forced to say goodbye and mourn his dead son in the presence of law enforcement. The detective remained behind him the entire time, talking loudly on his phone, continually disrupting what had been, prior to his arrival, a very peaceful, quiet, and supportive, though deeply sorrowful, family gathering. In the aftermath of this event, we have heard from staff at Maine Medical Center who have expressed shock and sadness that any family would endure such suffering at a hospice death. The physician who cared for my brother in the cardiac intensive care actually called my mother after he heard what transpired to express his sympathy and to gain insight to see if there's anything they could do in the hospital to prevent this from happening again. It is my understanding that Hospice of Southern Maine conducted a formal review of their policies and procedures and have actually made revisions to prevent this from happening. As well, my parents' priest composed a beautiful letter on our behalf, which was submitted. Please know, I have immense respect for members of law enforcement. I am not here to condemn the entire department. In the aftermath of this, I actually reached out to Officer Mazuzin and received a lovely email in reply. As well, the chief sent an email offering condolences. However, at no point have we received an apology from the police department. I'm here today because my family and I remain deeply disturbed that a member of the police department would treat a grieving family with such disrespect and insensitivity. In my personal opinion, this incident exemplifies egregious police overreach. We are here today because we are concerned that something like this could happen to you or any other resident of Cumberland. No one should have to go through this. This is unacceptable. These actions do not reflect the Cumberland that I grew up in, the Cumberland that I think we all know and love. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, counselors, Mr. Shane, Ms. Moore. I'm Janine Gorm, Sarah's mother. I want to thank my 2 daughters for driving here. Sarah came 5 hours from New York, and Lisa came 3 hours to be here to support me. As a mother, as you can imagine, this was a very horrible situation. The night of my son's passing, I was deeply grieved, but also still very traumatized by what had happened in my home earlier. I was saddened so deeply by losing our son. My privacy had been completely invaded during this very personal time. I felt guilty that we'd done something wrong. Excuse me. I kept thinking, what did we do wrong? I mean, the hospice sent some medication home. Was it we were not allowed to have this medicine here? I didn't know. When the fire department personnel did come, he was accompanied by 2 younger gentlemen who stayed in the home also. So that was very uncomfortable for me. There was 3 firemen and a police officer, and I'm thinking, what did we do? I mean, what did we do wrong? My son was still in the hospital bed, and I just wanted to go in and cover his face because I wanted to spare him this, what the hell's going on here, humiliation. The police officer did not introduce himself to me, walked past me into the living room where my son was, and his girlfriend, Nairi, was sitting on the end of his bed, and he told her to get off the bed and ask who she was. It was then when I stepped forward and said, I'm his mother, Janine Gorm, who are you? Because I really hadn't heard what he had said. My son was a veteran of the United States Navy, and he served aboard the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier on the flight deck in the Persian Gulf. He will be laid to rest in the Veterans Springville Cemetery. He was a strong, kind, and compassionate man. Nor he nor anyone in this town deserves this treatment. We've lived in Cumberland for 38 years and never dreamed this could happen in our home. We are honest, good people. If we had committed a crime, we would expect this treatment from law enforcement. We have always considered members of the police and fire department to be trustworthy and respectful, and even some are our neighbors. Our purpose here tonight is to make council members and the residents of Cumberland aware of how much our family and friends have been affected by what occurred in our home. After losing our son by the behavior of one officer, I still think of it with remorse and sadness. Thank you.
Well, I just want to share with the council that that took a lot for Janine and Sarah to get up here, and I am deeply sorry, and I do apologize for what happened and what we did, because you can't, words are just not enough to basically go through what that family went through. We have and we will do better. We have new policies in place to deal with this. The chair and I talked today about different types of sensitivity training that should be implemented. And I just want to thank my gratitude to the family to keeping this out of a discussion of personnel matters, which would have basically almost ended the discussion. I think you needed to hear what happened. I think we all did. I think Janine and I spent 2 hours discussing it, and this was shortly after the incident happened, only probably less than a week or so had passed. She was brave, very brave to come here, and Sarah did an extremely articulate description of the facts. Those are all represented to what I received and what the chief received. The officer has received counseling related to this. The officer also, I think, understands how to better react. Again, sorry is not enough for what this family endured. I think there are roots in this community. You may not know it, but Janine is a retired nurse practitioner. She has been around these type of incidents her whole career, and to have to experience what she went through is indescribable. Any of us couldn't imagine losing a child. I don't care what age. I was in tears listening to the description and what they had gone through as a family. So tonight, I want to thank them and assure them that we will do better and we can do a lot better. This isn't what community policing is about, and it's nowhere close. It's unfortunate that this event happened. We will learn from it, we will do better, and we will correct it. I believe the chief had corrected it immediately, but there wasn't an opportunity to share the story until now, unfortunately. So Again, thank you both for being here. I really, really do appreciate that. So I'll continue, if you're okay, Mr. Chair, with the
Yes.
manager's report. I don't know why I'm getting all this echo, but I'll try to eliminate that quickly. A couple of other.
Bob has a question. Go ahead.
No question. I feel deeply for your loss. If we were at another time, I would get up and hug you both. And I thank you for coming in. Your comments are very much heard.
Janine and Sarah, thank you for coming this evening. I got to tell you, I agree that I would give you a hug too, so it took a lot of courage to come up here tonight, so thank you for doing what you did. Anything else? Shirley?
I want to echo my sorrow for your loss. We acknowledged it the very next town council meeting. You know, you've done so much for the community, Janine, and Sarah, you don't look much different than 7th grade. Thank you. But really, your story is tragic, and I hope we all grow and learn from it. Thank you.
Ron?
Janine and Sarah, I mean, I know your family, I mean, and I'm truly sorry for your loss. No parent or sister should have to go through this under any circumstances. I mean, you're both very good people, and I mean, this never should have happened, and hopefully we can correct this problem, but my condolences to you, so.
George?
Well, I want to add my deep sympathies as well. I can't imagine how you're feeling right now and what you've gone through. And what keeps ringing in my ears is Bill says we'll do better and so on. But the truth of the matter is, when somebody commits an act individually of just total lack of compassion and a lack of sympathy, the responsibility goes there. And I know you know, having lived in Cumberland for a long time and loving this town, that the odds of that ever happening again are nil. And I know our police chief runs a tight ship, and the appropriate, I just don't know how to put it into words. But we all sympathize with you and understand the righteousness of your coming forward and having the guts to do it, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, George. Anybody else? Thank you for coming. Do appreciate it. Again, sorry for your loss.
So tonight, earlier this evening, we did have our 4th Finance Committee. I think we're progressing fairly well through the budget. I believe we'll be wrapping up the budget, kind of the first go-through, if you will, by the end of the next meeting. And we'll have to determine what we'll schedule for August 5th. It might be either a review or it might be potential some different type of council training that evening, since it's kind of blocked out on most of your calendars already. I anticipate April 10th being the council workshop on the budget. That is a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. We would invite everyone to attend and participate. We'll be going through each budget, basically highlighting the changes to each budget, asking the audience for questions and input and feedback, and until it's over, it's over. So typically we end anywhere between, I think the earliest we've ever got done was 10:30, and typically we're near noontime, depending on the overflow crowd we typically have, which is about 5 or 6 people sometimes. So I'm hoping people will show up and participate, because it is important. It's the budget, and to understand it, it's good to come. So I'm hopeful with that. I also wanted to share with the council, it's been a really difficult week last week with the quiet zone work. I met with the Federal Railroad on Wednesday. They actually came up here. We had two representatives that, honestly, I was impressed by how much they helped in giving us the feedback we needed to understand the obstacles that are ahead of us with Muirfield Road. And I'll just share with you the other three crossings we visited, minor tweaking stuff, just some minor issues that they reminded us of, signage and drainage and a couple of really small items. So that was very simple. There are no issues with the three public crossings. They basically explained to me that Muirfield, being a private crossing, had no chance of being approved as a quiet zone under the federal statute. And they asked us that, they basically told us that in Portland, there was a private crossing down at Thompson's Point that was changed around by DOT and the city to make it a public crossing. And I reached out to Nate Moulton at DOT, who's in charge of the railroad piece of all this, and he explained to me, he said, yes, it would, and that they would need about 150 feet each side of the rail to be a public road. So that would have to be essentially a easement, that a deed the town was given for that section of road that would become town road. And that would put the barriers inside the 150 feet on each side, so that's a whole nother story. But then, to get to that, he said you could not have a private road come up to a public crossing. So we would have to work with the town of Falmouth, and Councilor Eads has volunteered to help with that if we decide to go in that direction and reach out to the council there. We would need a public easement at a minimum from Wynn Road all the way to 150 feet each side of the track. And I reached out to the town manager. He obviously said he would reach out to the council and just let them know the bind we're in. And that's where we're at. But it's really not that simple. The Falmouth on the Green, it's the name of the HOA, the Homeowners Association, is private. And they may not want to be a public road, and it gets a little tricky. I talked to the town attorney today. They would have to obviously be cooperative in that process, but it's not going to happen overnight because you've got two towns and a homeowners association that would have to work together to prepare the documents to allow for the transfer, public easement to the town of Falmouth for that section, very small section in Cumberland, and then acceptance of a public crossing for the rail. We would also then be responsible for the infrastructure that was there, which are 4 cart paths that are outside the fenced area but inside the railroad right-of-way. So it is a little tricky. The crazy part of all this stuff, that railroad crossing was put in when the development was approved, and it was probably the safest crossing in Cumberland at the time. It really was. It was the only gated crossing on a private road that they put in when they built the development. So no one really ever anticipated it ever getting to this stage of quiet zones. And if you recall from Tim Ferriss, who reported what happened initially, they initially had a quiet zone agreement with the railroad when they first put it in. The railroads didn't blow their horn for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden it just started up again when, I don't know, something happened where they realized that it was a private crossing, which essentially has no rights under the federal rail law. So we're in a kind of a tough spot. I think we should continue the process, and I think I kind of laid it out to you in an email, and I hope that maybe at a future council meeting you could give me and my staff some direction as to next steps. We'll continue to pursue the 3 crossings as directed by the council, but with that one smack crossing in the middle, you're going to basically hear the train horn all the way from Hannaford's to somewhere on Main Street in Yarmouth. So,
Bill, I just want to ask you a question. Do you know when the train's coming in this direction and it goes through Muirfield, at what point, let's assume we get our quiet zone for the other 3 crossings, at what point does the quiet zone kick in? In other words, when the train's going through Muirfield, I assume they could blow the horn there, but is there some point at which they're back into a quiet zone before they get to the next crossing?
yeah, and it's not very far because it's a half a mile from Muirfield to Route 9. It's really quick. And the Downeaster, the Silver Bullet, whatever we call it, the fast train, it doesn't take much time to get there in a half a mile. It takes less than 30 seconds. It's traveling well over 60 miles an hour. I think it's closer to 70, 75. So it's pretty quick.
So
They
the horn
basically-
won't be blowing 7 miles away, it'll be blowing conceivably within a couple of miles of all these people we're trying to protect by,
It'll be blown, through the crossing at Muirfield. So it's basically 3 short whistles and then a long whistle across the track for the freight train. I don't think the passenger train has that luxury because it happens too quick. So they're at a certain milepost where they have to start blowing the horn prior to the crossing. And it's usually at night, we'll hear 3 quick blasts and then a long blast when they come over the tracks. I'll get that information for you, George, but it's pretty quick on Route 9. They'll almost be to Route 9 by the time they stop blowing the horn. So the rest of the crossings would be horn-free all the way through Yarmouth. I think the issue is that when Falmouth approved this, I think back in 2012, 9 years ago, had all of Cumberland and all of Falmouth been in one quiet zone, then Muirfield would have been okay to be in a quiet zone. And there are no exceptions, there's no special exceptions that they have in treating a private crossing. A private crossing can be its own quiet zone all by itself, and that's the strategy that Federal Railroad has recommended we pursue.
Shirley has a question.
I'm so confused by this because every time I drive over to Falmouth, over to like the exit 48 area, there's that railroad crossing where we lost 2 Cumberland boys years ago when I was younger, and they don't have a median strip or anything. Or you get into Portland and they have the regular gates. And so they won't
Single
honor a
track.
quiet zone that they previously honored, but they make the standards different from town to town, city to city. It just is
So-
mind-boggling.
Here's where you're gonna hate math, and it is all about math. They have a little calculator that they basically put into an equation which deals with traffic, and it deals with number of accidents and accidents nationwide at these crossings. So they put all this information into this calculator, and if it comes out with a number that's less than the national average, you don't need to do anything. So think about this, Shirley.
I
if-
can't believe that
That's what
that
drives it.
railroad track doesn't have more traffic than any of our streets.
It does, except when you basically combine that with 4 other crossings, and all of them go together and aggregate into that equation, the worst one becomes not so bad. And all of a sudden, the number goes below the national statistic. This is one of the things that our consultant argued with Federal Railroad on Thursday. They said, I can play games all I want with numbers if I can find a couple of crossings that are, a couple hundred cars a day. All of a sudden, the whole quiet zone comes down below a level of safety that requires them to do nothing. And that is criminal in my mind. I mean, I don't know if I could sleep at night to come to you and say, this is the right thing to do because the number works, when I know how I manipulated the number. And that is not what we said we would do.
Right.
When we said we'd look at this, we said every crossing has the safety measures in place or we're not doing it, because everyone felt that anything like that could happen here at any time. So the barrier is entirely just to keep a car in its lane so it can't weave between the gates. We have 2 gates, and those gates go over the traffic. There's still an ability to weave through there now. If you put the barriers up, it would be much more difficult, at least for the cars that are in the first 100 feet. So it's frustrating when it's a mathematical model that can be manipulated to fit your budget. So that's the truth, and that's the frustration of how we deal with quiet zones. The frustration here is that a private crossing can't be the beginning or the end of a quiet zone, but it can be its own quiet zone, which is even more crazy. But we're playing by their rules and their rules only, so that's where we're at.
Allison?
You wanted at a future meeting to get some direction from us on this. So I would just say for myself, what would be helpful is understanding, you mentioned kind of the three that we have are pretty minor, and I think you have that all costed out, but to understand what would be the cost of the cart, like everything that we would have to do at that Muir Field if it was to become a public, and then the cost of the road, because then you're saying it would become, the whole road would have to become public?
Only 300 feet, 150 feet each side. What Portland did and what MDOT told me was acceptable is they had worked out an agreement with the HOA in Portland, said, we'll accept this as a public road in perpetuity if you continue to maintain it.
Okay.
Those are the types of things that are in place there. That HOA still does all the maintenance. The city doesn't do anything more. But the city was plowing up to one side of it. It was the other side of it that was not public, and the rail crossing wasn't public. So they had to only extend about another 150 feet of public easement, and it wasn't a big cost to them. We wouldn't, if we could get a public easement on both sides, then that public easement would be up to you and the town of Falmouth to say what it will cover and what it won't. Because remember, it's not like we're not owning this. It's basically a public easement which allows the public to travel over it. I would argue that it functions as a public easement today. If you're driving over that road, most people aren't hesitating until they hit their speed bumps, which are awful, and they're bad. Other than that, it acts just like a town road, and it's very well built and very well maintained. So that risk is minor to me, because you could say, and the Falmouth could say also, that we're going to treat this as public easements, but you, homeowners association, we're not putting town trucks on it, we're not doing town vehicles. That's going to continue to be you, and we're only going to basically accept that section, that 300-foot section at the railroad tracks, because we have to by law. You can't put a federal designated crossing, which is designated by the DOTs of each state, over a public easement. It has to be a publicly owned, or whatever we call it at that point. It's games. And the harder thing is that next year it's going to be more expensive, because CSX will probably own Pan Am at the time. They're in the discussions right now for the sale of that railroad. So CSX is a huge railroad. They do invest in their infrastructure. They do invest in their trains and rails. And I think you'll see an improvement. We talked about it at the last meeting, cars being parked everywhere at Yarmouth Junction. They said you'll never see that with CSX. They're pretty much on top of a lot of those things. So while it comes with some improvement, it's also a much bigger company, and there will probably be a charge to the towns to even look at that, to be considered for a quiet zone. So a lot more to come on that, so sorry to monopolize your time, Mr. Chair, but I thought it was important since it's kind of fresh on all our minds.
Yes, it is. You want to do the manager's budget update?
Yes, oh, thank you. I apologize for missing that entirely. So right now, I think we're in really good shape. We got a preliminary number that they rolled out at the school last week. They're looking at about a 4.5% increase in the school budget. With our increase, we're looking at probably a tax rate increase of less than 2%, somewhere around 1.9% or 35 cents per thousand, which is a lot better than I thought we were going to be at last year. There is no discussion yet on the new school or potential new school. That's still looking at a referendum. I think late September, maybe October. So more to come on that as that evolves over the next few months. But at this point in time, those are the best numbers we have. Obviously, they have to go through their entire process still, so this is all very preliminary. We hope that it might be a little bit better, but the news, I think, is encouraging, and the news from the state has been encouraging as well, as the funding to municipalities continue to look like they're going to be fairly positive for next year. So I think 1.9% increase as a projected tax rate is where we're going right now at 35 cents. I think that is a fairly responsible budget. Most of the increase, obviously, is on the school side. Their increase is somewhere around $890,000. That's offset by the revenues they project for next year as well. Those revenues still look to be strong, and we hope they hold up. And if they do, we're going to be in pretty good shape.
Thanks, Bill. Anything else?
That's it from my end.
Okay, thank you. The next item is public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up for new business by town council. Anybody here for any items for public discussion? Seeing none, thank you. Next item is legislation and policy. State of Maine, oh, good, Brenda, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Item 21-028, State of Maine Proclamation from Representative Steve Moriarty for the Town of Cumberland Bicentennial.
Thank you, Brenda.
And I'd like to add, Mr. Chair, that our Senator Kathy Breen is here also tonight. We weren't expecting her initially when this was published, so thank you, Kathy, for being here this evening.
Okay. Thank you, both of you, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the council. I'm Steve Moriarty from 12 Oak Street. I serve as your state representative in Augusta. And I'm very happy to be here tonight with my colleague from the Senate, Senator Kathy Breen, who is our senator. Kathy lives in Falmouth. And we bring messages tonight from both the executive and legislative branches of state government in recognition and celebration of Cumberland's bicentennial. And I will defer to Kathy to lead off, and we'll follow her when she has finished her portion of the presentation.
Thanks, Steve. Welcome, Kathy.
I am so happy to see all you people live and in person. It makes me giddy to be out and to be in town hall and to say hello to everybody. So thank you so much for having me. And for those who don't remember, I'm Kathy Breen. I represent Cumberland, Falmouth, Yarmouth, Gray, half of the city of Westbrook, Chebeague Island, and Long Island in the Maine Senate. And you might know that there are certain occasions and certain milestones that happen in our communities all over the state that not only the community is really proud of, but the entire legislature, the entire state of Maine sits up and takes notice. And your bicentennial is one of those. So congratulations on a great celebration. I'm sure COVID circumstances make it challenging in ways you wish you could change. But the bottom line is the community of Cumberland has so much to be proud of. And so I'm very honored to be a part of your celebration. And I have something called a legislative sentiment. And this is a document that is signed by the Senate President, Troy Jackson, by the House Speaker, Ryan Fecteau. And so I will read it aloud. State of Maine, be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, join in recognizing the town of Cumberland, which is celebrating its 200th anniversary. In the 1640s, the first European settlers in present-day Cumberland built rough homes in the Broad Cove section of Ocasisco Bay. The area was known as West Custigo and was eventually incorporated as ancient North Yarmouth. Lumbering, agriculture, and shipbuilding were the foundation of the local economy. Clusters of populations formed throughout North Yarmouth, and one of these was Cumberland Center. In 1820, a petition for the establishment of the town of Cumberland was presented to the legislature, and an act of incorporation was passed and signed into law by Maine's first governor, Governor William King, on March 19, 1821. Over the following 2 centuries, Cumberland has grown into one of Maine's finest residential communities while maintaining its rural character and heritage. We extend to the citizens of the town of Cumberland our congratulations on the town's bicentennial. And be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 130th legislature and the people of the state of Maine. Signed, Senator Troy Jackson and Representative Ryan Fecteau. So thank you so much for the honor of presenting this to you this evening. I'm going to leave it right here, so Representative Moriarty, make sure it gets to you. And I'm going to step away and welcome Representative Moriarty back for another message of congratulations. So thank you for having me, and congratulations again.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Senator Breen. I have to share a personal story with you, which makes this particularly exciting for me tonight. This is the second town in Maine in which I have lived at the time that it celebrated its bicentennial. My boyhood hometown of Hollowell celebrated its bicentennial in June, or rather July of 1962. I was only 12 at the time, but it's one of my favorite childhood memories. Among other things, there was a parade, there was a fireman's muster, and if you've never seen one of those with the old hand pumpers, it's really worth watching. But one of the most interesting events at the time, and remember that this was a clean-shaven era, was a beard-growing contest, which didn't start in July. It started in April to give guys a bit of time to get a bit of fuzz going. And anyway, it was just part of the fun. And it's just so nice to be able, at a later stage in life, to be here in a town that I love as well, and to be part of its bicentennial. So tonight, I bring you greetings from the governor, who has issued a letter in recognition and in honor of our bicentennial, and I'll read as follows. It's addressed, "Dear friends, I am pleased to join you in celebrating the bicentennial of town of Cumberland. This landmark celebration is a wonderful opportunity to explore the rich history of your town. Originally home to the eastern Abenaki settlement known as Wescustigo, present-day Cumberland was settled by Europeans in the 1640s and became one of the largest towns in the province of Maine. In 1820, the residents of Cumberland petitioned to separate from North Yarmouth, and the Act of Incorporation, as you have heard, was signed by Governor King, Maine's first governor, on March 19, 1821, 200 years ago this past Friday. Located on the shores of Casco Bay, or the Abenaki name of Ocasisco, sea captains, shipbuilders, sawyers were the foundation of Cumberland's economy. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the town's agricultural economy grew as well, featuring large apple orchards, poultry, and dairy farms, and greenhouses that shipped carnations across the country. This strong agricultural identity lives on even now through the Cumberland Fair, which has been held annually since 1868. Education has also been a shared community value for the people of Cumberland since the first town meeting in 1821, when town leaders appropriated $550 for the coming school year to the founding of the GREELY Institute, now GREELY High School, in 1868. Over the past 200 years, Cumberland has established itself as a small town with city perks, including good jobs, great schools, scenic parks and trails, a friendly community, and 4 seasons of outdoor recreation. From Memorial Day parades and farmers markets to the Cumberland Fair, it is towns like Cumberland that truly make our state unique. On behalf of the people of Maine, I wish the citizens of Cumberland the best during your bicentennial year. I hope you take this special occasion to celebrate your community and take parts in events throughout the year, from the birthday parade and scavenger hunt to historical lectures and the cemetery tour. Sincerely, Janet T. Mills, Governor." I will leave this letter with the sentiment with Brenda tonight. I hope they'll be displayed here at Town Hall and or the Historical Society, or perhaps rotate between the two. They're suitable for framing, and again, it's been a great honor for me, as it was for Kathy, to recognize this event formally before you tonight and to bring the greetings and good wishes of the people of the state. And now I understand my role is to introduce before you the two co-chairs of Cumberland's Bicentennial Committee, Tig Filson and Ellen Gray.
Emily Gray.
Emily, sorry.
Thank you, Steve. Where's the mouse gone? I'm sorry. Oh, I actually thought I was going bonkers. Okay, awesome. Good to know. Thank you guys so much for having us. We wanted to kick off. I hope that everyone has seen this, but if you haven't, and forgive me, I haven't been vaccinated yet. Can you all hear us clearly? We're more comfortable with our masks on, if that's okay with everybody. All right, perfect. So I'm going to give this a go.
And you may recognize a voice.
And you may, yes, hopefully you'll recognize voice. All right. And the volume should be, ooh, what's going on here? Let's try. Oh, no. Oh, no.
For a second.
All right.
So when it doesn't work, we do it home.
Oh, there you go. Love it. Do we want to do a quick refresh?
Yeah.
All right, let's refresh the page. Okay.
200 years ago, residents of the southwestern side of North Yarmouth signed a petition requesting that a new town be incorporated. These residents cited that the travel required to attend town meetings and perform the ordinary duties as a citizen in such an extensive area was inconvenient and burdensome. While the distances the residents were looking to reduce are no longer the burden they were, the benefit of a smaller, closer community can still be felt today.
I was at that fire.
It's a community that has evolved and grown. But for 200 years, during struggles of wars and pandemic, times of growth and building, through life's milestones like graduations and birthdays, the people have come together and remained at the heart of this community. The town of Cumberland invites you to join us in celebrating our past, present, and future.
And I just wanted to say, because she will not advocate for her own talent, our amazing colleague back there, orange sweater, Bailey Douglas, put together this incredible video for us. You know, she brought together all of this, I mean, you saw the footage, you know, historical footage. We had our wonderful Mr. Moriarty here narrate all of that. And I think on behalf of Emily and I, it's really been such a privilege over, you know, for almost 2 years now. We started right at that desk. It's been just an incredible journey for us to be here. And as Kathy mentioned, you know, COVID has not been ideal. We have made a series of right-hand turns, but we are so excited about what we have planned for the next year, or until December 31st, of course. And we wanted to just take that opportunity to share that with you guys. So thank you again so much for having us. It's really kind of our privilege. So hopefully you guys were all here for the parade. Did everyone get out to see the parade? Awesome. Wonderful. So that was sort of our big kickoff, really. You know, we felt like it was so important to bring people out of their homes and just see each other from a distance again and remember kind of the big, sorry, what was that?
Do you want to show the pictures and stuff?
Oh, yeah, we should hit the pictures. I'm going out of order, so, sorry, Emily's really she keeps us on track. But basically, you can see here, you know, we had representatives from the police and the fire, and we had a great big snow plow, and we've got some cool pictures here if you missed it. Thank you, Shirley. Credit for taking a lot of these. Nope, that's it for pictures?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go back a little bit just to let you know of some other things that we have coming up. So we officially launched the online exhibits on the 21st, all sorts of kind of cool stuff. ranging from, we have an exhibit all around kind of the artistic talent within Cumberland, which was so cool. Another shout out to Dale back there, who has done some amazing photos of the town. Diane Dalkey has an incredible thing of fiddlehead ferns, just great to kind of bring together and showcase all of the talent. Thomas Bennett has done an amazing job of kind of showcasing a lot of the historical artifacts and, you know, the important moments that have happened. And so we really wanted kind of a core repository for people to kind of go and access with a couple of clicks, you know, a lot of these exhibits. Originally, you know, we were hoping to showcase these at the Historical Society and at Town Hall, where people could kind of mill around and, you know, see them in person, but we've pivoted for the moment. So the other nice thing about that is that, you know, hopefully those exhibits will be available online for kind of a period of time to come. One of our other initiatives, is anyone familiar with Humans of New York? Okay, great. So what we did is sort of a riff on this idea of having really kind of lighthearted, you know, fun-filled interviews with folks around town to showcase, you know, everyone from all walks of life. So here we have in her Dahlia glory, of course, Joanne Fryer from Mofield Farm, you know, giving us a taste of summer. Here you've got, you know, someone with their little tater tot at Knight's Pond, you know, and we have some kind of fun-filled quotes to go with them. So over the next year, we'll be trickling out interviews that are done by all, you know, members of the Bicentennial, but really kind of give flavor to, you know, everyone in the town, and really kind of the goal is to showcase, you know, people from all walks of life, if that makes sense. We already did that. Oh, but one more on the bottom left-hand side, you can see these cool coloring pages for kids. Another way that we've tried to, you know, kind of make these celebrations accessible to, you know, the young, you know, as well as our seniors and, you know, everyone kind of within each age range. Really, our focus has been about kind of uniting the past, present, and future of the town. We talked about that. We talked about this. Bailey, do you want to talk about your scavenger hunt at all? Okay, so another project that we have to credit our amazing Bailey for. So one of the things that we have coming up, launching on April 1st, is we've put together these different clues, all within walking distance of Cumberland Center. So basically you're going to see kind of a pine tree with a clue, or 10 pine trees located around town, and we'll have a list of clues. And so it's supposed to be kind of a outside, family-friendly type of activity where people can do this going all the way up to December 31st. We'll have all of the clues available online on the Bicentennial website, as well as at Town Hall. Bailey has figured out how to put QR codes in here. I don't even know what that means, but apparently it's a really, really great way to kind of be able to walk around with your phone, access all the different clues, and, you know, be able to kind of do that with your family. So we're really excited about that. And each of the next to the pine will be kind of content around why that particular site is relevant and historical. So that's a great way for kind of kids and families to be able to tap into the history in a very safe and responsible way as we come towards, hopefully, the end of this pandemic. All right, over to Emily.
So the kind of big finale-ish to this celebration will hopefully be a big event at Twinbrook on September 18th. We're going to begin the day with a family-friendly race that we're calling the Beach to Bacon. I'll credit Pete Bingham with that name. It's going to just be a kind of fun run, 2.25 miles to run from Broad Cove up to Twinbrook, where there'll be a 1/4 mile fun run for kids and some brunch and bacon, of course. During the day, we'll also have a bunch of activities, including carnival games, a photo booth, radio-controlled airplane club's going to do a demonstration. There's an antique car show planned, and hopefully get the community band on board. Some of the local businesses and organizations are going to sponsor all sorts of activities for kids, maybe an inflatable obstacle course, some of these things pictured here. We're going to have some classic carnival games like ring toss and a dunk tank that we are hopefully recruiting some important people in this room for who's not making eye contact with me. So we're going to have some fun with it. The whole day should be just a way for the
Ron
community.
Kopp actually volunteered last
Oh,
night.
okay.
You missed the finance committee meeting.
Ah. So the whole day is just going to be a great opportunity, hopefully, for the community to get back together and be together and have some fun. We will also have some food trucks, which is important. We got to eat well. Got a good lineup already signed on for that. A beer tent, hopefully, too, as you guys have heard us pitch in the past. So just be a really nice community event, and we'll end the whole thing with some fireworks because that's the best way to celebrate, right? There'll be about a 15 to 20-minute show at the end of the evening. I'll just finish up with marketing. Marketing continues in the regular channels online with Instagram, Facebook, our website, and our online galleries. We did launch the promotional video that you've just seen, and we are still selling all of our wonderful gear. We've sold quite a bit of it, and I think sales have just recently picked up some more, which is great. We'll continue to sell those at the town farmers market and the locations where they are, the library. Food company's got a few items, and town hall. And we'll also have them available at the Twin Brook event, of course. And I think that is our plan, and it's great to be here. It's fun to have the representatives here to celebrate with us, so thank you for coming. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I just want to jump in and add the cemetery tour.
Yes.
Because Carolyn is here. Carolyn Small is
Talk
here.
about that.
Do you want to come tell us about the cemetery?
I thought you weren't going to make me speak.
I know. I kind of promised that she wouldn't, she'd just have to show up, but.
I'll stand back. I have contacted the Royal River Community Players, and we're going to be working together to have some cemetery tours. We've got 7 cemeteries in Cumberland, so it's going to be, I think Nancy Wilson Latham has got something planned for the West Cumberland Methodist Church Cemetery. We have a very famous artist in that cemetery, Scott Layton, who worked for the Currier and Ives Corporation. And any of the Currier and Ives calendars that you see that have horses in it, he probably did it. The Currier and Ives company was kind of like Thomas Edison in that it was like a laboratory. Currier and Ives got the credit, as did Thomas Edison, but it was the workers that actually did the work. Of course, in this cemetery here in the center, we have a lifeless GREELY and his wife Elizabeth Laurie Greeley. And down at the Cumberland Falmouth Forsyth Church is Ephraim Sturdivant, who was the appointee to name the town of Cumberland that. I don't know where that comes from. There is a Cumberland, England, and a West Cumberland, England, and he was a ship's captain, so I don't know if he had something special with that. But anyway, Cumberland County was already established, so he named it, and we'll have some good hauntings there. I wish we could do it at night, but that's not exactly a safe thing to do. So, any questions about that?
Shirley?
No, I just want to tell everyone this has been an amazing committee, just amazing, from the town staff of Chris Bolduc and Eliza Porter, and the members who are here, Tig and Emily have just, Chris said, I was afraid I was going to have to do all the work, and he has told them over and over. He is so happy to be part of this committee. I also wanted to give a shout out to Meg Pelsinski,
Yeah.
who is not here tonight, but she did a lion's share of the work on the parade from Florida, and she's done some work with merchandising from Florida. It was a little painful in the middle of winter to have her in our Zoom meetings with palm trees in the background,
Yeah,
but We were so glad to have her, and she really knows how to rally the fire department and get them involved. And we'll be continuing to use town resources as we move forward in the celebrations. But I am so proud to be part of your group, and thank you sincerely, all of you.
Well, we appreciate the support from the council and the citizens of Cumberland. I mean, everybody's seems to be having a good time and supports us with everything, so happy birthday, Cumberland.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna sign out of here, and I just wanted to also do a little shout out. We would be lost from a content perspective without Carolyn, so her kind of wealth of knowledge has been incredible throughout this process. And I echo Megan Pelsinski because she fulfilled my lifelong dream of going on a fire truck. I was the only civilian allowed to go on a fire truck because she got me special permission. So big shout out to her for making dreams come true. Thank you guys so much. It was so wonderful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Next item, Brenda.
21-029, to hear a report from the Lands and Conservation Commission regarding Climate Action Plan.
So Denny or Mike, are you one of you going to basically, okay, they're going to be coming up to give their presentation. And Denny, as you start to get ready, for your slides tonight, would you like the council to jump in on each slide, or do you want to wait till the end? It's really up to you guys.
Great. Let me just get this.
Over to slideshow.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to open. Let's open up the whole thing first.
Let's see.
Just close it and open it again. Maybe that'll be better. Yeah, we locked up the computer. All right, let me sneak in here for a second.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, I'm Denny Gallaudet, 67 Range Road. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm a member of the Climate Action Subcommittee of the Lands and Conservation Committee. We're a group of 7 people who have been working for a year, and I have 2 colleagues, Mark and Jesse, who will be filling in on this. We have a slideshow that'll plan to take about 20 minutes, and but please feel free to ask questions as you go along. So January of 2020, the Town Council tasked this subcommittee to take a look at the problems that climate change may be presenting to this community, both on the public sector side and also the private side. And in the first year to examine the problems that we see in the public sector and to develop a set of action plans for dealing with those problems. Now, what started out for us as a problem through our work this year, which was reaching out to committee members, staying close to the action at the state level with their climate action plan, conducting a survey, and so on and so forth. What started out as a problem has emerged to us as an opportunity. And the opportunity is represented by this logo, which is what we're calling our report, which is Sustainable Cumberland. And I would say that we had the benefit of one of our members, Suki Curtis, who lives in Wildwood, who is a professional artist, who created this logo, so a shout out to her for doing the work. But Sustainable Cumberland means to us that we, as a result of implementing this plan, have the opportunity to show our uniqueness among communities around the area. We're excited about this as an opportunity because first, the solutions that we'll be discussing a little bit here have turned out to be feasible and in many cases lower cost, reducing our cost. Also, we find that our community, and compared to communities in the area, has gotten a big head start on all of this as a result of the work of Bill and his crew and the people at the school, as well as past town managers. So we've got a nice jump. And lastly, Cumberland, compared to communities in the area, has a number of kind of unique resources that will allow us to have a very responsive and sustainable climate action plan. So I've kind of mentioned that you got us going last year to develop an inventory of town greenhouse gases and propose goals and actions. This is building on the 2009 comprehensive plan, which is a very good start. This presentation will be phase 1 of the work, which is for the public sector. And next year at this time, hopefully we'll be presenting a phase 2, which will discuss the business and residential side of the town. This is a baseline of the carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions that we put together as of the year 2015. 66,000 approximately, the metric for this work is metric tons of carbon dioxide. And by sector, we find that the public sector was relatively small, 1% for town government, and 7% at the school, 13% on the business side, and 79% in households. So tonight you'll be hearing about a smaller piece of the pie, but obviously a very important one. And then just by use, the carbon emissions in Cumberland break into this category, 44% for heating of buildings, 37% for travel, that's gasoline and diesel expenditures, 15% for electricity, and 4% for waste. So we're starting with a baseline of 66,000 metric tons. Now this is where the Head Start part is fun to talk about, because since 2015, the town and the school have taken actions that have actually reduced our carbon emissions by 25% already. So hats off to the team in the room. The ones that I'll mention is that the community or the public sector was very quick to move to fuel switching, whereby by switching over to natural gas away from fuel oil and in the town's case propane, excuse me, I'm meaning to be talking about this graph. I'll come back to fuel efficiency. So this is the decline in carbon emissions that were a result of switching to natural gas from the more polluting fuel oil and carbon. Also, both the town and the school have had fuel efficiency, energy efficiency programs ongoing. The school entered in some contracts with the Siemens Corporation to take out the old boiler, for example. And then the town, as you well know, established its solar farm here, which represents the next drop. And then most recently, the conversion to LED streetlights. So this is quite a substantial reduction already, and we were really excited about the momentum that's already been created. In these two cases, the cost of going to PV electricity for the town and the LED lights is actually saving money, as did the conversion to natural gas is a saving money situation. So looking forward, Mark and Jesse are going to come up and speak more about this. We see the opportunity to keep this trend moving quickly, and there's the opportunity for the town, the public sector here to become carbon neutral by 2030, which is 9 years from now, which would put us way in front of any of the surrounding towns, including Portland and South Portland. So we're excited about this opportunity, and we want to thank you for giving us a chance to work on it.
Thank you, Danny.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Town Council, and Mr. Manager Bill Shane. Thank you for having us here, and thank you to the...
Name and address.
Oh, excuse me. My name is Mark Segrist. I live on 16 Old Musket Road, Cumberland, Forside. I'm a relatively new member of the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee, so it's a real honor to be here today to talk about this important issue. I think Denny did a fantastic job of giving a background of kind of where we were in 2015, what the baseline numbers were, what steps have been taken since 2015 to reduce carbon emissions down by 25%, as he just showed, and what we can do in the future. So I've been tasked a little bit to talk about what the specific goals are for 2030. It's really kind of two big buckets here, as Denny mentioned a little bit. First is for phase one goal for the town, municipality, as well as MS 8051. We'll be speaking with them separately. But the first goal is to achieve carbon neutrality for the town by 2030, and also to promote the brand Sustainable Cumberland for the town of Cumberland. So that's the goal. The next question that comes up immediately is, all right, well, how do we reach that goal? And giving credit to the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee, who was doing work long before I was fortunate enough to join, they came up with 9 very specific action steps to hopefully achieve this goal in working together. So you can see that the first action step is in parentheticals, and it's in parentheticals because it relates specifically to MS 8051, so we're not going to be spending a lot of time talking about that today. But you can see that it would be working with them to install a solar farm for their electricity needs. The second action step is more applicable to the town specifically. And this would be where we would recommend the installation of industrial scale heat pumps to help supplement natural gas heating and mitigate the greenhouse gas effects of natural gas heating. For those of you who are familiar with heat pumps, I'm still in the process of learning about them a little bit myself. But I understand that these industrial size heat pumps are extremely common in Europe. They're extremely common in Asia. I think the number in the report is referenced that anywhere between 80 and 90% of all new HVAC installations in those regions are industrial type heat pumps. The physics work very similarly to maybe a heat pump that you might have in your house. And so that there's potential savings opportunities, but there's also clearly a drastic reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The next action step is the phase-in of electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid automobiles, light-duty vehicles, and school buses. Clearly, the school buses relates to MS 8051. But the good news here is, and I think Denny mentioned this a little bit, that there's already been a head start. I think it was just in the last few weeks that the town finalized its lease of the Hyundai Ioniqs, which are the 2 electric vehicles that'll be used for town purposes. And so what we would encourage the town to adopt is just to continue that trend. So for automobiles, for small lightweight vehicles, to continue moving in the electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid space, just given the fact that most data is showing that from a price parity standpoint, it's feasible for towns to be able to be purchasing electric or hybrid vehicles at the same cost basis as maybe gas or diesel vehicles. We do recognize that for larger vehicles, the heavy-duty vehicles, garbage trucks and things of that nature, there's just really not a viable alternative out there, so that's going to be a sticking point for the future. And then the last point that I'll discuss today before passing it off to my colleague Jesse here is the recommendation to set aside a 225-acre forest carbon reserve from town-owned woodlands. And the logic here is that, I mean, I think we all understand that forested areas and trees, they suck out or they sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. And even after this 9-year period by 2030, there's still going to be technology out there that's emitting carbon. We're just not at a place where nothing emits carbon. And so taking that reality into effect, we know that a certain portion of forested lands, if set aside, would be a sufficient amount to sequester. We were estimating around 20% of our 2015 baseline. So our 2015 baseline for the town and the municipalities was around 3,600 tons of carbon that were being put out into the atmosphere. And so approximately 225 acres of wooded land would take that amount out of the atmosphere. So that's why that number is there. So with that, unless there's any questions for me, I was going to turn it over to Jesse. So.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Mark, couple of things here. The industrial scale heat pumps and the phase-in of electric vehicles. And so I guess the challenge that I find is is when we're using the electricity to power these two things is where we're getting it from. And so the importance, from my understanding of, and my studying on this subject, is that we need community solar, we need industrial scale solar, so that we're not charging our electric vehicles off fossil fuel plants. We're not powering our heat pumps from natural gas. We need to be powering that off of industrial scale solar panels.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, and Denny could probably confirm this too, but the idea would be that it would be one clean loop, right? You're getting the electricity that you need to be able to heat the water through these heat pumps, and that heat pumps can heat the water, and then it's this cycle that continues over and over, and so that would be the goal ultimately, yeah.
And Mark, the carbon sequestration of the town forest, that's a huge policy decision that you'll have to wrestle with, but I was still a little confused on where that went to. Does that 225 acres set aside all by itself get us much closer to the goal? I mean, if we're at 25% reduction now, how much closer does that get? I got lost in the math.
So that's Jesse's actually going to cover this, I think,
Okay.
in a graph moving forward. But that's a great question. Again, it's this question. Denny and I were speaking about it. It's almost this fiction that any town can come up with. What is your carbon reserve for an offset? And so the state of Maine, as part of its plan, is recommending somewhere around this 20% number, right? So if we say, all right, 20% of our carbon emissions in 2015 would be 725 metric tons. And if we wanted to set aside as an offset 725 metric tons to get us closer to that carbon neutral position, then that's the number that it would be. And so there'll be a chart here that shows a little bit more of what that means, because we're never going to get to a point where we're never producing a carbon emission. Oh, maybe we will someday, but at least in terms of this plan.
And that's a 30-year commitment, from what your understanding is? That
Correct.
we wouldn't cut anything in the forest, we wouldn't, essentially, you could move trees that are decaying and dying, but pretty much you'd have to leave the forest as it is for 30 years.
Correct. No harvesting, no. Please, of course.
I have another hat, which is I'm chair of the forestry subcommittee, so I can maybe, we have the town owns outright about 900 acres of forested land, which is one of the unique things about our community compared to surrounding towns. We have this beautiful resource that has multi-benefits, including the ability to sequester carbon. And so, as Jesse will show in his chart, to get to zero by 2030, we're proposing this set aside. As it turns out, we have about 10 properties that we own, including the town forest, and a number of them, for example, the GREELY woods, are really not available for forest harvesting in any case. So it's likely that this set aside of 225 acres is going to be on lands that wouldn't be naturally available for a timber harvest and the revenue there. So it's not a huge financial commitment, but we'll be developing this more fully for you when because I'm going to be in here, and Mike and I are going to be in here talking about the forestry activities.
Another question? Yeah, sure.
A tree, so a tree while it's alive uses CO2. If it dies and rots, does it emit more, or does it emit less than it, took out of the atmosphere?
I don't actually, you okay?
It does.
Complex, that's a great question, and what's going on in the forest.
Could you repeat it, Denny?
Sorry?
Could
Yeah, the
you
question was, what happens when a tree sequesters carbon over its life, then dies and falls down, and it will return that carbon to the atmosphere over the next 150 years. It's a very slow, but what we need to focus on is the net, the amount taken down and subtracting from this, what is released after the tree falls down. So you need to come up with a net carbon sequestration number, And this 725 acres is based on the inventory that we just completed at Knight's Pond, in which our forester was asked to make a determination of how much net carbon sequestration is going on in our forests at Knight's Pond, and it's about 3.5 tons a year, taking into account growth and mortality. So that's the number that we're using, and it's been verified by an inventory of our own woodlands and certified by our own forester.
One tree, just take one tree, it's going to absorb CO2, and then it's going to emit CO2. What's the net? Is the net zero for that one tree?
Not for the first 300 years of the life of that tree. The first 300 years of the life of that tree, it's sequestering carbon.
If the tree lives to be
And then it would die. But the one tree is not a good analogy. You need to think of the entire forest, because some trees grow and then others die and then others replace it. So it's the net growth of the forest, and that's where we came up with the 3.5 tons per year per acre of Maine woodlands.
How many trees last 300 years?
Pines last 400 years.
They do?
Yeah. And the thing that is not often understood about Maine woodlands is our Maine woodlands are really quite young because of the nature of the way this community was developed. In 1821, the forests were being cut rather aggressively, and but I was in the town forest, actually in the Twin Brook Forest the other day, looking at a pine tree. There's a 38-inch diameter. That's a 200-year-old tree, and it has another 200 years to live if it's not cut down. So our forests here in Maine and in Cumberland are really only 100 years old, and they have a long life ahead of them before they stop sequestering carbon.
I'm just having I'll be quiet after this, but I'm having difficulty with the idea that in the long run, trees make any difference. I'm thinking, in the long run, trees are net zero. I'm just thinking that, and I don't think you've made what I'm saying incorrect. I don't see that it's incorrect, but that's all I have.
Well, we'd have to disagree. But let's take that up at another time.
Bill?
I just have a question. Aren't you not overlooking grass, anything that's green and so forth, so that a field or a farmer's hay field that he doesn't cut till the end of the year is doing a lot of this work for you?
Yes, in fact, part of the climate action plan of the state is, in addition to the forest, to also look to agricultural lands. And there's a number of techniques to enhance the carbon sequestration of grasslands, which the best one actually is biochar, if you might have heard of that, and cover cropping and so on and so forth. So our natural systems in the state of Maine are going to be doing a lot of work for us, and we're blessed with a wonderful set of naturally owned land or forests and fields that we own outright or are owned by our citizens here. When we take into account the town-owned forest, the land trust forests that have been set aside, tree growth, and also the open space, I forgot to mention that, or the open space and now conservation ordinance that we have over 3,000 acres of land in conservation, which is about 20% of our total acreage. So it's a huge asset.
Thank you, Denny. Mark, thank you.
Pass it up to Jesse.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks.
Hello everyone, Jesse Lamar Vincent, 93 Range Road. So I'll go over the rest of our steps here. Number 5, design and build new public buildings to a zero carbon standard. So there's currently this is something called the Zero Code. It's a national and international building energy standard that was developed for commercial, institutional, mid and high-rise residential buildings. it basically says when you build new buildings, put more insulation in them, use heat pumps, you know, offset with solar, which are things that the town is already doing in many of its buildings. But we wanted to call that out so that in the future, when the town is building buildings, we're sort of leading by example by saying, you know, we'll pay a little extra money to insulate the building, we'll put in heat pumps, so that that building isn't causing more of a problem in the future when we've already moved so far to solve a lot of these problems. And any savings on that has nothing to do with the drawdown in 2030. We're just looking towards the future past 2030. We think if the town acknowledges that we want to sort of hold ourselves to a higher standard, we think that'd be a great way to set an example. This next one really came out of the survey we did. So we put out a survey, we sent a postcard to every member of the community. It was a thing in the Cumberland Crier so people could tell us what they think are the most important issues around climate. We got an amazing response. And the number one response was people wanted more local food and farming to be happening. And one of the big problems is it's expensive to buy land in Cumberland and to farm in Cumberland. So it's economical to farm way in the middle of nowhere where land is cheap. And so one of the ways we were brainstorming, you know, a way we could bring local produce and farming closer to Cumberland to make ourselves more sustainable is to potentially make 5 or 10 acre parcels of town-owned land available to market gardeners for a you know, below market rate, you know, for some lower cost lease. And I think that fits into our sort of broader idea of branding ourselves as sustainable Cumberland. That some of these action steps aren't necessarily directly tied to lowering our greenhouse gases, because many people don't care about that, but they do care about local food, not trucking it in from halfway across the state or halfway across the world. So we've been very intentional in this plan, not just to talk about greenhouse gas emissions and drawdowns, but to look at it more holistically and include things that people in the town care about. And that was the number one thing people cared about on the survey, and that's in the full report if you want to see all the responses. The first couple have nothing to do with energy efficiency, because people don't care about those things in their day-to-day life usually. So the next one, develop a tree planting program for public ways and easements. This is another, you know, top 3 response to the survey was that you know, people love trees. It helps cool the planet. You know, it helps sequester carbon, depending who you talk to. And so, you know, we think developing a tree planting program for public ways and easements is a way to beautify the town. It's a way to sequester carbon. It's something that people in Cumberland care about, and makes us a bigger draw compared to the towns around us who have strip malls and ugly roads. This next one has to do with the school district, so we want to engage them to integrate sustainability practices and climate action planning into their K through 12 curriculum, so that the youth and future adults of Cumberland, you know, are forward thinking and learning about all the steps we've taken and what they're going to have to do to, you know, help make the world a better place once they're able to make these decisions. And finally, we want to delegate to the town staff the duty to annually analyze and report greenhouse gas emissions generated within Cumberland. We think that's important because we want to know how far we've come, and you'll see in the next slide we've come pretty far already, and we don't have that much further to go to get to net zero by 2030. And so if we're measuring it and reporting on it, we can say, you know, we're drawing it down, and again, we can sort of promote ourselves as sustainable Cumberland. We're better than Falmouth and Yarmouth and surrounding towns because we're taking action. We're measuring it because we care about it. So I'll go on to our next slide. So here you can see Denny sort of touched on where we've come from all the way on the left from our baseline. Right in the middle, we're already down about 25% by 2020 with all of the things we've already done: fuel efficiency, fuel switching, the town solar, street lights. And so to get us the rest of the way there by 2030, PV for the school will be a huge one because the school uses a ton of electricity, and so if they install their own solar to take care of that, that'll take a big hit out of the electricity usage. Heat pumps for the heating piece will take another chunk out of the heating, and then EVs for the school and EVs for town takes a little bit more out of the transport, and we're still left with a bit of a chunk there, and that's where those forest offsets come in. And we think those forest offsets are important. The town isn't planning on cutting down all the forests we have anyways, but we think it's important to recognize that those serve a purpose other than just recreation, that those really are sequestering carbon. And in my professional work, I work for the Government Accountability Office and just did a job fairly recently with the U.S. Forest Service. They have a number of scientists. Depends on the forest you're looking at, how much it's sequestering over time, the age of the forest. I can send you some of those reports if you want. But I think that, you know, valuing our forests for what they're doing in terms of climate is important because, you know, they're not just for recreation. And Cumberland is, you know, sort of a leader in having forests as an amenity to the town residents. And that's something that sets us apart. It's one of the reasons I bought a house and moved to Cumberland, because I came here and was like, you look at it on a map and it's incredibly green. So it's a huge draw, I think, and a way we can sort of brand ourselves to set us apart from our neighbors. So in conclusion, our climate action plan, it outlines action opportunities to build a future sustainable Cumberland that supports a carbon bank to subsidize investments in clean energy, where local farmers produce and sell local food and improve the local food security, where people and ecosystems thrive together, and that builds a sustainable community and attracts like-minded new residents who value all these things. And Cumberland's proactive multi-year, multi-stakeholder investments in land and forest conservation position Cumberland as an innovative leader in climate change mitigation and provide a platform for further action. Yeah, and I think looking at the plans of other towns around us, I think we were really proud of how far Cumberland's already come. A lot of the work has already been done. And so we feel like we have a lot of momentum to build on that and sort of set us apart from our neighboring towns, both as a leader in sort of climate change mitigation, but also, you know, just making Cumberland a more sustainable community overall. So with that, if you have any additional questions on the slides or the 33-page report we sent you guys, we're happy to answer them for you.
Shirley?
I want to applaud your work, specifically the measurable goals part of your work, because this is something that's been around probably for decades. Oh, we need to be more sustainable, more sustainable. In 2015, the United Nations adopted 17 sustainability goals. And they're actually, you'll be happy to know, taught in 7th grade, my colleague and I, Ann Murdoch, along with help from our English language arts colleagues, Beth Fenwick and Kyle Dankos, took these 7 sustainability goals and taught them to students. And they picked projects because they were measurable. They had to do something that was measurable. We can all talk about how we want a cleaner planet, cleaner air, but what I really like, and I encourage you to take a look, if you haven't had a look, at the 17 sustainability goals from the United Nations, because you've hit a number of them. You hit, you know, number 7, affordable and clean energy. You've hit number 11, sustainable cities and communities. There's a great deal of overlap in what sustainability means, but where we fall apart sometimes is, what do we measure? How do we measure it? And how can we prove we've done anything? Like, how can we prove that tree is, you know, really giving us, absorbing carbon when it's just going to give that carbon back? But, and so I applaud your committee's work for the measurability aspect of your work forward. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments by the council?
Nice job.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Their timeline is the same as yours too, by 2030.
I think it's important for the council to recognize there will be a lot of policy decisions that you will have to make, and I think it lines up very nicely with the way these guys have laid it out. I think my concern is the community solar that we have built, basically the solar right on the landfill, takes care of all our electrical needs. It does not come anywhere close to what the school needs. It's about 4 times the size of that. And I guess, Denny, I'll ask you directly, if we don't have the ability to do a similar project for the SAD, could they buy into a project being built elsewhere that would replace the electricity they use and buying into one of those big, large solar farms?
Yes. Well, Bill can remember that he organized a meeting with the Facilities Committee of the MSAD, which I attended, and they were very enthusiastic about moving forward in this project. And it was just before COVID struck, so, you know, they've had their hands full. It's possible, they would need about a 10-acre site. And I think they would prefer to find one here in town. Peter Bingham is on the Facilities Committee. I think he'd like to build it here if he could. So I think the first search will be to go and do it. And it will, current pricing, it will bring them electricity as it has here much more cheaply than the standard offer from CMP. So it's doing well by doing good at the same time. Failing that, if we can't come up with the 10 acres, a number of the surrounding schools have bought into these partnerships that, for example, Revision Energy, who we worked with, put together a deal with 2 school districts, including Yarmouth, I think somewhere in Oxford County, as long as it's on the CMP grid. And they were all set to build their solar farm on that pole yard, on Montfort Road. But there was going to be some difficulties, with the, with that pollution. So they just went ahead and did it with Revision. And that would be an option that would be available. Falmouth schools, Gray schools, have all, and I think the Portland Water District have done similar type of arrangements. But my sense is the school would like to do it locally.
I
with
think
local vendors.
our struggle here is that we don't have a commercial ordinance, as the ordinance committee wrestled with for solar farms, because there were big land requests for it and more on a commercial basis. But on the local or municipal basis, we still could be looking at that under our current ordinances, that you would be allowed to do that. And I don't want to give up, but the school is also going to have opportunities over the next few years to buy into some of those farms. And I think that communication needs to kind of stay connected through you, Denny, and your group, because they'll eventually get back to looking at these type of issues, and I hope it's by fall. And when they do, we have to be prepared to either assist or direct and say, it might not fit here, or, we can do X, Y, and Z. And I think that would be between, if it was in North Yarmouth, that would not be part of our plan, is my understanding per your plan tonight. So the SAD, if they built a solar farm in North Yarmouth, it doesn't help our carbon offsets here in Cumberland.
Well, yes, because they would be using the electricity that they're using in those buildings here in Cumberland, so.
Okay, so
yeah.
either town then would
Yeah.
benefit from
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Bill, it just occurred to me, there's a solar farm in Baldwin. Are you familiar with that, Denny? I was just impressed with the fact that how far away it is, and getting advertisements in the mail asking you, to participate. And, there have to be others that are closer than Baldwin.
Well, that's the other thing, is that it's such an intensive land use in a compact area, not so much when you're going out to
Right.
bigger acreages and so forth. So I think the SAD, it'll be competitive over the next few years. Denny, you talked to the council several times, and we're fast approaching the loss of the tax benefits as well. So do you foresee those being extended out further, or?
Well,
have
they were already extended out 2 years, and I'm quite, we will be invited to make this presentation to the MSAD Board of Directors, I've been assured, and so we'll be touching on the points that deal more directly with them. But on the top of the list would be a solar farm for the district. They have about 5 times the electricity load that the town does.
And yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's almost $500,000 of annual savings if they could do what we did, which is significant. Our savings is about 100,000. Theirs would be about $500,000. So that's big. My last question, Denny, is natural gas. We were pretty aggressive from 2014 till probably about 2019, 2020. That expansion has kind of stopped because the demand by neighborhood and the density of housing has kind of left it really down to just a service plan now versus an expansion plan. How does that hurt us, or does that even project in your model for, conversion to natural gas. Is that a small piece of the plan, or it is what it is at this point, and you're not expecting much more?
Well, the school and the town have already converted. So
Right.
you're thinking local businesses and, yeah, no, well, we don't know. That's our phase 2. We need to reach out to the businesses and communities to find out what they're doing with their energy, but our plan implies that we will still be using natural gas to heat buildings here at the town and the school. It's not realistic to get it completely to zero, and that's where the forest carbon reserve comes in to kind of cover the.
Thank you.
This is also a public discussion. Does anybody have anything? Mike, do you have anything you want to add? Okay.
I just would follow up one, because I know you're still thinking about it. You're correct. Starting from now, 400 years from now, the forests would become neutral, or they would be releasing as much carbon as they're taking in. But if you go up that growth curve for the next 400 years, you're always going to be in net sequestration mode in the Maine woods. And 400 years from now, you know, we're going to have solved this in other ways than having to depend upon the forest. So relying on forest carbon sequestration is something that makes sense for the next 50 years, but not beyond that. And this plan doesn't call for that.
I hear you, and then, yeah, I'm still going.
Danny, I think he's assuming that the total carbon in the tree itself is gonna revert back to the atmosphere. And in real case, the organisms around are gonna accumulate the carbon
Right.
into their structure and therefore not release it back.
That's right, and so it's a complex, and I know you're a scientist and studied all this and are more knowledgeable than I, but yeah, it's, yeah, when that,
The only thing about your whole plan that worries me is as you remove the carbon dioxide, what are the trees gonna use to grow?
well, if we can, we just need to get it back to where it used to be in 1820, you know.
We've got more trees now than they had in the 1800s.
Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Any other questions by the council? Moving right along, says Bob. The next item, Brenda?
21-030 to reappoint William Longley as Code Enforcement Officer and Dan Small as alternate from April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will come back to you annually, and staff obviously recommends their reappointment as code officer and alternate.
Anything from the council? Any questions?
I propose a motion.
Okay, Bob?
Ron Kopp is waving his arm down.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a motion. I move to reappoint William Longley as Code Enforcement Officer and Dan Small as alternate from April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022.
Bob has a second. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Next item, Brenda?
21-031 to set the week of May 17th through the 21st for spring bulky item pickup week.
Mr. Town Manager?
Mr. Chairman, the next 5 items are to set public hearings. We typically do this so that the public can see what's coming on the next few agendas. On all 5 items, staff is recommending April 12th to set the dates for mass gatherings, for a mass gathering event for the Farmers Club. That one has come to you several times and has come to us as well, but our partnership with the Farmers Club is always to put them first on the agenda, even though the mass gathering will be with another entity. The other 3 are 2 union contracts and basically a credit enhancement agreement that was discussed by the TIF committee last week. So just to, usually at this point, you'll basically just say, so moved with a lot of to set of public hearings. I'm happy to go through all of those, but they are truly just to set dates.
But don't we need to do the bulky waste
We do.
first?
Right, but I just wanted to, you
Okay.
pointed to me, and I just wanted you to,
Okay.
because we're going to
You're
recommend
trying to
April
move us
12th.
along, I see.
Yes, he is. Okay.
So moved.
So, thanks, George, whatever that's for.
Second.
Is that for the bulky waste?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Sure,
Ron?
Ron.
No?
Ron.
Ron,
So
okay.
bulky waste.
Okay, for bulky waste. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, we're getting a little tired here, I guess. So the next item, now that I'm totally confused,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
can I recommend that Brenda read the next 4 items?
Thank you, Mike.
and-
yeah,
And then
okay.
that we can have a motion to accept.
Yeah,
You're
very
okay
good
with that,
idea.
sir?
That's fine.
21-032, to set a public hearing date of April 12th to consider an act on a mass gathering permit from the Cumberland Farmers Club for harness racing events.
33.
Can we do them all?
Yep.
Okay. 21-033, to set a public hearing date of April 12th to consider an act on authorizing the town manager to enter into a labor contract agreement with the Cumberland Police Benevolent Association for the period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. 21-034, to set a public hearing date of April 12th to consider an act on authorizing the town manager to enter into a labor contract agreement with the Public Services Valhalla Employees Association for the period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. 21-035, to set a public hearing date of April 12th to consider an act on a credit enhancement agreement for Lakeside Concrete Cutting and Abatement Professionals as recommended by the TIF Committee.
Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I so move that item 21-032, 21-033, 21-034, and 21-035 be so moved.
Do we have a second? Ron, second. Further discussion from the council? All in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Are we going to do new business?
Yeah, we do new business. Yes, go, very fine. Let's do it. Mike?
Not too much, Mr. Chairman, just, I really enjoyed the conversations today.
Yeah.
I want to just express my appreciation to the Gorhams for coming in. I also want to just stress my support and confidence in the police department. We got a good group of men and women, and we'll move on and we'll do the right thing. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mike. Shirley?
Just 2 things. One is a reminder to citizens to please check out what is bulky waste and what isn't. There's always issues about that every year, every spring, every fall. If it's not a bulky item, it'll be tagged and not removed. And so if in doubt, check the list. There's plenty of public information on that. And then like Mike, I just want to, I'm deeply grateful tonight sitting here for our community. You know, it's 200 years old, but it's really the people that serve on all of these committees, the Bicentennial Committee, the Conservation Committees, the Climate Action Committees, the Planning Boards, all these people that just give an amazing amount of time to making Cumberland who we are. I'm just deeply grateful, and that's what I have for tonight.
Thank you, Shirley. Bob?
I'll start by saying hear for Shirley's comment. That is very true. I will point out to those people who pay attention that the school board's cost of living was 5% last year, and 4.5% this year add up to 9%. So anybody keeping track of those things, pay attention, and we should all go down there and ask questions and make sure they can justify their spending habits.
Thanks, Bob. Just a couple items here. Last time we were open at the food pantry, we had 65 families. And I do want to say that a great thanks, big thanks goes out to all the volunteers that we have. St. Jude Church made a donation for us. I don't know if that came in yet. Okay. But it came from their social justice committee, and it was a very generous donation. And a special thanks to my friend Linda Morissette. I enjoyed the parade the other day, and Shirley, thank you so much for that. And it was, I sent an email out to Shirley, and I said thank you so much for it. She says, "Oh, it wasn't me." And so
it was Megan Polsinski.
So thank you. It was terrific.
Her maiden name was a lot easier to say. Morgan.
A lot easier.
Morgan.
And we have from the 4-H club, Bill Stiles, thank you. Be passing those out. And that's all I have.
Tom, before you go forward, I do want to shout out to Holly Seddon, who lives here in town. She reached out to me and asked if she could help with the food pantry. Last Thursday, the grant went in for $10,000 for storage facilities for the pantry, and we were successful in getting all $10,000. Holly basically filled out the entire grant herself. She has an amazing agricultural background, Mr. Vale. She, in one email, was able to recruit about 6 different entities to help with the subcommittee we're looking on for agriculture and sustainability in food growing in the community. And some of these committees are looking to maybe do some pilot projects that we've talked about around town, and recruiting local farmers, as well as connecting in with the schools. So it all came from one email from Holly when she said, "I know this person, I know this person," and I had no idea what her background is. She said she comes from Missouri. She lived on a very small farm in Missouri. It was just over 100 acres. So that was a boutique farming in Missouri, she said. So she said she comes from where there's a lot of sky. So it was really exciting to get that, and it was awesome for the pantry.
What's her name again?
Holly and Dave Seddon. They've been working with us for a long time. This past year, they've been raising money through basically supporting our community restaurants, getting gift cards for our pantry customers to attend those, to go to those restaurants with takeout, Food Stop, Louis, the North Yarmouth variety as well, and others around town. So she and Dave have been unbelievable. And when we lost connection or we run out of produce, she magically shows up with $3,000 of produce from native Maine. I mean, her and Dave have been just unbelievable. So couldn't pass that up when you were mentioning, and you and I haven't caught up about the pantry, that piece of it. So I did want to share with the rest of the council. All good news.
Thanks. Allison?
Just a reminder for everyone that the Communications Committee's Pulse Survey is out there, and if you do not have access to internet or don't feel comfortable accessing the survey via the internet, there are hard copies at the town hall, and you can submit those hard copies right inside the door. There's a location right there with a sign, so you can do that as well. And I think we'll probably leave it open for only about another week or so, I think is the plan. So just 5 minutes, if that, literally 5 clicks of a button. So please, we really would like your feedback and to really understand how folks are getting information and receiving information from the town, so we can be better.
And so far, we're over, I think, 30 or 38 weekly criers that we're mailing out because of the Communication Committee work. And George, some of yours saying basically not everybody does internet, so how do we get it out? We've had 38 people so far sign up for it, so that's excellent.
Terrific. George?
Well, I was going to say I had nothing, but I can't. I really really want to express my condolences to the Gorhams again. And I just want to emphasize the fact that we spend a lot of time spraining our arms, patting ourselves on the back for what a wonderful town we are and what a wonderful police department we have and what a wonderful everything we have. And it's all true. And I just want to say in my mind that the actions of the individual, if they were even close to what was reiterated to us tonight, were reprehensible, and it was an individual who just had a really bad day, to use the understatement of the year, and it has no reflection on our police department or anything else. If it was a question of training, it would be one thing. But that whole episode had nothing to do with training. That just had to do with not using common sense, in my mind. So again, I want to express my condolences to the Gorhams, and I know there's nothing we can do to change the picture, but that's the way I feel about it. That's
Thanks,
all I
George.
have.
Ron?
I want to thank 4 different individuals, or 3, for the donation of the food pantry. Allison, George, Bill Stiles, who's our only audience spectator tonight, is $80 more for the 4-H food pantry, which is a very worthy cause. These were left in front of me tonight by an individual, the only spectator we have here. It says, "Be part of something special. Support our local 4-H clubs and community food pantry. Your donation helps purchase 4-H auction animals at the Cumberland Fair in September. The meat is donated to the Cumberland Food Pantry in Cumberland." This is a very worthy cause, and I want to express to you, Bill, you the soul behind this thing, and I'm trying to keep it rolling, and it is working. I do make donations myself to the food pantry, and lo and behold, about a week ago, there was a trailer truck rolled over on the Maine Turnpike that was loaded with wine. And I didn't get any, but my phone was blowing up and wanting to know if I was going to bring wine to the food pantry. And I said, had I got the call, we'd all would have been happy that afternoon. But I didn't get that one. It was too far north, so maybe next time. But I just want everybody to know that if they see these, pick one up, because it is a worthy cause, and it not only benefits the people, but it benefits the children in 4-H. So I want to keep this rolling, so
I
that's
just
all I
want to be
have.
careful with that, Ron. Bill has a granddaughter that basically helped him get that started, and she's about ready to get married in the next year, this summer or next summer?
Oh, you're off on my grandchildren, but you're right.
Well, she helped get this started, and Bill and her came forward when we started, so they did a great job, and Bill continues to carry the torch for us.
All right. Good job, sir.
Bill, you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Brenda?
Nothing, thank you.
Thanks. Do we have a motion for adjournment,
So
please?
moved.
Thank you, Ron. Second. Shirley, second. All in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Thank you.